chill.
Draft Addies, how the hell are you? What I can say for the three of us is some of us are doing better than the others. Some of us are fighting for a little more than one win this year. We've got some thoughts on how we're doing this year, and we've got some thoughts about how you're doing this year. So we're excited to be here with you. This is, I don't know my term for who I am here, but it's your boy Aaron. I'm here we got the full crew. We've got the ass and the commish here. How you doing, boys?
Oh, we're doing great. We're doing great. And just so you know, and just so people understand the scoreboard, we've been calling you the butt. So I just feel like
that's right. It's
we've had the ass and the butt. I feel like the butt makes sense.
Well, I know, we're a bit progressive here, and I take my wife's name, so that works.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love that. And to be clear, us three as a trio, and Aaron, you may have, I know you formally know it via just our podcast chat, and I'm not sure if you listen, but we are the Podfathers. We are your Podfathers here, everyone. So Podfathers coming in hot. I think hot, right?
You know what else is coming in hot. And speaking of titles, we have our new Dean of Merchandise, right? Matt Kreutzer has sent out a message. Hot. We've got order forms out and about in the chat. So this is your reminder. Matt asked for that. Today is Tuesday, September 23rd, the Rapture, if you haven't figured that out yet, by the way. So September 23rd, and if you haven't been raptured, your order form for the Draft Daddies merch is due tomorrow. We'll send it again after we get off this call, but Matt has put in there a lot of options. I think there's some flexibility with colors and maybe even some flexibility with logos that the ass and commish were discussing before we started here. So make sure you get your orders in. Matt's put together a lot of really cool merch. I think maybe 4 people had their orders in there. So let's get those orders in as soon as possible so that we can take advantage of our merch during this year. So go ahead.
And Matt wants it when?
He said by tomorrow, but
by tomorrow being the 24th.
Yes, correct.
So daddies, as you're listening to this, that means probably end of day today.
Okay. Blake.
Or possibly yesterday. Could be yesterday. Yeah.
But we have 2 daddies that are 0-3, and we'll get to a little bit more of them later. Or it'll actually probably be in the blog, but 2 daddies that are 0-3 that I don't think have said one thing in our group chat since they went 0-1. So don't know if they're alive. They may have already completed the suicide pact. But as we just open up, kind of talk about our teams, I thought I was going to go 3-0. I don't think my team's incredible, but I thought I was going to start the season off 3-0, which is going to put myself in a good spot throughout the season. I still think I am, especially now that I've found an RB2 who really popped off this last week. One of the most tantalizing white players in the league right now. We can all root for the white player, maybe besides one of us in the league. But Cam Scatabo looks incredible. It's exciting to add him officially to the lineup. My other white guys, wow. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 white guys starting in my lineup. That might be the most. Aaron, I think you're muted, but 6 white guys in my lineup.
Yeah, this is the exciting
awesome.
Whites. You've got 2 white receivers. I mean, these are just really gritty guys. Cam Scatabo is just, tough as nails guy that's, real glue guy. Drake May, young new Josh Allen, just absolutely.
Ricky Pearsall still, taking bullets. So yeah, an exciting team. So I feel like I'm in a good spot. I think there's a lot of high potential, especially Lag can really start going later on here this season. Definitely don't think I'm the best team, but I think there's excitement here for sure.
Yeah, I think there's at this point in the season, you just lost your first game and it was a close one. So you got to be feeling pretty good about, the status so far and knowing that despite an injury, right, you've got a great piece to plug right back in there. I would say for me, I'm feeling a little bit of the opposite. I think I'm lucky to have 1 win right now. I would say I know that I'm not the worst team in the league because I want to talk about the worst team in the league today a little bit. But I took some chances. I took some risks on some guys this year. And I was really excited on draft day about a lot of them. But thus far, we've really seen how bad the Las Vegas Raiders line is, right? I think Genty's being, he's getting the touches, he's getting the carries. He's been close to 20 carries each week. He's not getting passing reps. His line, he's averaging like 2 yards per carry. And so he's got 1 touchdown in the first week. And so it's been a little rough in the running back department. Alvin Kamara, just in a Saints offense, just a Saints team that's just awful, has been written out of the game script continuously. He had a 100-yard game in week 2, but has really been written out of the game script. And then Marvin Harrison just doesn't exist in the Cardinals offense. So I'm hurting with my top dog running back. I'm hurting with my wide receiver number 2. I'm kind of hurting with my wide receiver number 1. Nico finally had a breakout week this last week, but has really been pretty absent otherwise. So I've been right around the 100 points every week, which is kind of a goal. I think maybe I've gotten unlucky in my matchups to lose 2 out of the 3, but I really need these young guys to kind of break out and actually start to be reliable in their offenses, because I've got pieces on my bench that I don't feel that much better about. So it's kind of somebody's got to do something here soon, or I'm going to be at risk here.
Yeah, I bet when you started the season, you didn't expect 2 Cowboys to really be leading this team. And so the fact you're relying on them.
I will say they are kind of my top dogs right now. Javonte had 60 yards in the first quarter last week, and kind of, they were, they didn't need him as much. He lost a fumble, which is his only bad thing. But Jake Ferguson, Jake Ferguson stepped into that role last week without CD. Thus far throughout the season, Jake Ferguson's got 27 catches on 32 targets. 27 catches out of your tight end in 3 weeks is absolutely insane. He hasn't hit the end zone yet, but I think it's a diamond in the rough where he was like my last pick. I think he was the last tight end pick in the draft. So I think, great pick there with Jake Ferguson. Blake.
Yeah, Blake, I know that you are a Jake Ferguson believer. You've had him the past couple of years on your team. So are you missing him on your team this year?
Yeah, I am. Only on this team. I actually have him on 1 or 2 of my other leagues. But the thing is that, I let him slide, and kind of hoping that he would, because he's always kind of feels like Kittle in a way. And I know that there's an unfair comparison there, but he's one of those tight ends that has potential. Like, if he gets in the end zone, he was going to get some points. He might see a little bit of usage throughout, but get you 5 to 7 points. If he gets in the end zone, maybe you get a 10. That being said, this year, he's seeing even more utilization. Like you said, he hasn't even seen the end zone yet.
He hasn't.
20. I was hoping he would get dropped eventually, and I figured at some point, who knows? Maybe we'll have a trade coming up. You and I, maybe we'll get in the lab and figure something out, because I do love some Drake Ferguson, but I will say my love for him is a little bit more justified than just grabbing him off waivers than it has been the last couple of years.
Yep, come find me. Well, I just looked it up. 27 receptions is second in the league, only behind Puka Nacua at 29. Among tight ends, the second highest is 19, and Trey McBride is third with 17. So tight end volume this year is not great, and Jake Ferguson kind of has a premium on volume in this Dallas offense, especially with CD out. Again, he's not hitting the end zone, averaging 10 points, but a bright spot on my offense so far this year. So, Blake, how are you feeling about your team?
Yeah, I will say for my team, I am. We'll start with the tight end just to throw it out there. Am thoroughly I don't want to say disappointed. I just expected a little bit more utilization of Sam Laporta. Obviously, I didn't expect him to have his year 1, year 2. Last year, we saw him kind of slipping off, being a little bit less. I mean, there's so many mouths to feed there in Detroit right now. At the same time, I wish that he could be producing just a little bit more out of that, because with all of my matchups, except for when Taylor absolutely just more than stomped me into the ground. But my last 2 weeks have been real tight, and I could use a little extra help there in that tight end position. But across the board, here's the thing. I feel very lukewarm about my team. The past 2 years when I haven't made the playoffs, started out 0-3, I think the last 2 years as well. I didn't love my team. I was struggling with one thing, knock on wood again, but I haven't been bit by the injury bug yet. It's bound to happen. It happens to everybody. But I haven't been hit with that yet. And I feel very lukewarm about it. I'm back and forth with the Bo Nix, Caleb Williams. I will say I wasn't expecting this to happen, but I feel pretty good with CMC and Travis Etienne Jr. I know that, and arguably, if you think back, there was a table of guys in particular. Aaron, I think you were sitting over there, and I think that you probably were a big part of this. Actually, it was you primarily heading it up, talking a bunch of shit about that Travis Etienne Jr. pick, and I'm feeling pretty good about that now, as he has he's kind of proven his worth. Like the fact that he has done what he has done has already proven itself worthy. At the same time, Isaiah Pacheco has absolutely just like, he's barely in my starting lineup right now. So I knew that one was a little bit of a stretch, but feeling good about some of this. Drake London, it's like, is Atlanta, I mean, we all saw what happened, arguably one of the craziest upsets thus far this season, potentially, with Atlanta being shut out by Carolina. And Drake London, I think there's a little bit of injury battling happening there. JSN, again, lukewarm. I think the nice surprise is running back core. And I don't know, my biggest fear throughout my entire team is that if I do have any injury, I'm kind of SOL. I have like a spot in that flex that I really need filled, and any injury will just kind of fuck me, to be honest. But we're sitting okay right now. Like I said, feeling like a 50-50 team. I feel like this feels like a playoff contending team, but not a sure thing to get in, and definitely not going deep. Not as it is right now in this moment.
Yeah, we're gonna have to see some changes in our teams to really take advantage of the latter half. So, I mean, yeah. I think we could see some more value with the Falcons receivers if Kirk Cousins does end up coming back for a starting position.
1,000%.
Supposedly he's not fighting for the starting position this week, but I wouldn't be surprised if at some point this year he is.
Yeah. Yep, I totally agree. And Aaron, I know that you are just as much of a Kirk Cousins fan boy as I am him coming back, because him and Drake London, Darnell Mooney, they had a great connection last.
So right now Jackson is sitting 9 points below on average through 3 weeks than the lowest point total we've ever seen. So Jackson, if you're listening, we're praying for you. The suicide pact is still a thing, so just know that you've got friends around you.
And if you're not listening, then you're getting what you deserve.
Maybe that's the reason why you're 0-3.
Maybe that's another
reason. That's another reason. Well, speaking of not listening, we've got Glenn Shin versus myself for the first matchup here this week. So Glenn sitting at 2-1. The G Train Rats are rolling, and this is a week that I'm a bit scared because there's a big difference between being 1-3 and being 2-2, and I am hoping that I come out of this 2-2. Glenn's team, Jared Goff is always Jared Goff. He's never going to be the top guy, but he'll put up 18 to 20 points most weeks. Josh Jacobs and Chuba Hubbard, both solid running backs. Puka Nacua is our wide receiver 1. Garrett Wilson's our wide receiver 8 right now. Just knowing he's got all of those weapons, that's already scary for me because, again, Genty, Nico, and Marvin Harrison on my side have not done the lifting that they need to do. Jake Ferguson and Javonte have been great. Hopefully Sunday night against Green Bay, they show up. I am hoping, I need this for the rest of my season to see some of these guys break out. And so with that, I'm going to take myself. I'm going to make a secondary bold prediction that I'm going to be above 120 points, and I'm going to win this week. Though, if I don't win this week, I fear for the rest of my season.
Yes, I agree with a lot of what you said, Aaron. I do think you need to score this week. I think this is a tough matchup with the Rats. They do have a solid team, like you mentioned, Puka earlier, who's looked really good. I do think you may score a little bit more than your average this week, but I think the defenses the Rats playing are just not strong defenses outside of Cleveland, Dallas, Indy, Miami. Pittsburgh really hasn't looked great either. I just think that there's potential for points to be scored there. I think they do that. I think the Rats take this one.
Yeah, not to be a Debbie Downer on you, Aaron, but the Rats seem to be producing points this year. He's what, 2-1, I believe, and he is just hanging on to these wins. I don't think throughout the course of the remainder of the season that we continue to see this, especially with a 2 quarterback bench, and they're not like super standout Justin Fields, who's sitting in that kind of ambivalent spot, and Jordan Love, who, while maybe good for Green Bay, is not great for fantasy. I think that it comes back and bites the Rats in the butt. But this week, I'm thinking they're gonna get you, Aaron. I see you just have some tough matchups going into this week.
It's a hard matchup. I will say, in terms of points, I actually have the Rats on points overall this year by about 5. So him and I are competing kind of right in the middle of the pack. He's on the favorable end of the 500 spectrum, and I'm on the less favorable end. So I think that this matchup is closer than we expect. And again, I think I really have to rely on high ceilings.
Some kind of spectrum, that's for sure.
There's a spectrum.
As we look into this next matchup with Team Keats and the Bald Bison, We mentioned Team Keegs earlier. I think he's going to welcome back Jaden Daniels to that lineup. Marcus Mariota looked solid. He had a rushing touchdown last week, but just doesn't replace the offensive potential that Jaden Daniels brings. It'll be interesting to see what he does at the wide receiver position. You have Jamar, who hasn't, last week kind of got shut down. He faces a tough defense with Surtain this week in Denver. Zay Flowers, who looked pretty shut down last week. But you got Keenan Allen sitting on the bench, and it looks like a career resurgence from Keenan Allen now that he's back in with the Chargers. Do you put him into that lineup as he's wide receiver 7 on the year? I think that could potentially be a spark for that offense. Tyler Warren looks incredible, and we all hated on the David Montgomery pick, but wow, we saw what he could do last week as he led the Lions offense. On the other side with the Bald Bison, James Cook is RB2. For some reason that just doesn't make sense in my head that he's really RB2. I just feel like you think of the Josh Allen show, and then you got Dalton Kincaid as tight end 3 on the year too. I don't think those numbers quite hang up as there's not as many high point games for the Bills this year, but they could. Justin Jefferson looks a little bit better without JJ back there throwing the ball, throwing interceptions. Again, just a team that I feel like I'm not super fond on, that maybe haven't found exactly their stride outside of those Bills players this year. I just don't see enough this week to give Bald Bison the win. So I think Team Keegs actually picks up their first win this year.
That would be a good week. It would be good for that. They need that. They need the vibes to get out of it. And you're right, with the Demont pick, we all hated on it, and he even hated on it himself. And at the same time, it's kind of worked out for him. And I think that you're going to see Demont continue to, he's getting more, he got more utilization. He's getting more week over week as early in the season, you heard the Lions saying, hey, we're going to, Gibbs is our guy. But then they've kind of gone back to almost a true share, at least as far as a Sonic the Hedgehog and just a brute force guy. But I want to talk about James Cook real quick, just because when you look at the rest of it, yes, it is kind of wild that James Cook is what you said, RB2. He's produced 19 points, 26 points, and 19 points again. Then you go on further and look at the remainder of their schedule, or at least for the next few kind of core weeks of fantasy. They have New Orleans, New England, Atlanta, Carolina. So, and the Josh Allen, I think that it is truly proving out to kind of like a Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson situation, where you're seeing the threat at quarterback really opening up even more for James Cook, and maybe it might not be the same kind of brute force power that Derrick Henry has, but at the same time, I see a lot of point potential there. Unfortunately, though, for the Bison, I don't see a lot else really pulling together in the remainder of this week. I think that there is some weak points throughout this team. Justin Jefferson, wide receiver core in general, is probably underperforming for what he would like them to do. I'm also going to go with Team Keegs getting win number 1 this week because he's due.
Yeah, and the only thing I'll call out different than you guys is that Bald Bison has Trey Benson. So knowing the James Conner issue last week, Trey Benson is likely to get plugged into this lineup, I'm guessing in the flex position. And I like the running backs that we have on Bison's team. However, CJ Stroud has this phenomenal ability to drag the rest of your team down. And I experienced it the entire year last year. And I think Bald Bison's experiencing it this year. He's always just a disappointment. And I think that Team Keegs' team is far too scary, especially with Spencer Schrader, the GOAT. This week, I think he gets his first win, and we're going to see a close matchup. And I like both of these teams going forward, but I do think Keegs gets his win this week.
Yeah. Yep. All right. That's a clean sweep for Keegs. So make it happen, bud. Our next matchup here, we've got the 2-1 Victorville Villains. Keeg could get his first win this week, and this next guy, Jackson, is hoping to get his against the Victorville Villains, 0-3 in the 2-1 Victorville Villains. And the big question mark here is that James Conner situation. Does he have someone that he can slot up in there with his? I don't see, because if he is on the IR, and I do not see anybody actively. And we know how absolutely thin and non-existent running backs are on our waiver wire. So I see that being a huge, huge downfall and a huge missed opportunity for Victor in this week, even though I don't love the look of Jack's team, I think that with just basically only running out one running back, I don't even think he actually has an option right now. He does not. He actually doesn't have an option for someone to get in there.
He's gonna be running, Devin Singletary or Chris Rodriguez or Jerome Ford off the waiver wires, or unless we start to see a trade being made here.
Which I don't think I've ever seen him even on the trade conversation. So injuries are really taking down the villains this year. I'm going Let's Deep to also get their first win this week.
No, that's bold. I love that. I definitely think there's a chance, with the way that Daniel Jones has played this year. I think there's a chance he continues to lead Let's Deep. If you get a couple other guys on board, Territory McMillan can be that guy against a weaker New England defense. DJ Moore just needs to have a week, and I think he's going to pop 1 week. He's going to be kind of hit or miss with that offense as that continues to explode. It could be any week. Tyreek Hill, you have no idea what he's going to do. But again, I think this team is finding their groove, and I think they will continue to do that even with CeeDee Lamb getting hurt. That's obviously the tough beat this week. It says he's doubtful. There's even some there's no projection, but a lot of questions there. But I think there's potential this week. But I do think it's interesting. Like even with no RB2 in Vic's lineup, like he's still almost projected to win. I think AJ Brown can have a big week. Like there's more big game potential, but it's just hard to follow it up week to week to week to week, right? Like Hunter Henry just broke out. Can he follow that up again? Lamar Jackson has looked good, even though he's playing KC this week. Can he have another big week? It's just hard to have those consistently. I do think there's enough. I think there's overall still a low scoring matchup, but I think there's enough for Victorville to squeak by.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I think that, Jackson's had a team of disappointments this year, right? With, CeeDee Lamb getting hurt, with Kyler Murray and, plugging in Daniel Jones here. But, DJ Moore and Tet have not lived up to what you'd expect. Nick Chubb and, Chase Brown especially has been probably one of our biggest fantasy busts in those first 2 rounds of the draft. And Tyreek has not been great either. So to your point, I think Vic, despite not having James Conner, whoever he plugs in there, knowing he has Lamar Jackson, Jalen Moore, and AJ Brown, he's got some guys that can pop off. I don't see that as much on Jack's side. So I am going to give it to Vic. And I think that, both of these guys should probably get in the lab for some trade opportunities here coming up soon. And then with that, we've got something that we've never highlighted before because of our name change. We've got the Battle of the Dogs. We got the Chicago Dogs and the Dayton Doodles coming up. So this is a hell of a matchup. I actually love this matchup because these are two teams that have shown great promise and also a little bit of disappointment. So really need to square away, again, just like my matchup, which side of the 500 marker you're going to be on this week. So Baker versus Trevor Lawrence. Baker's still that guy. Baker's been a great quarterback this year. Can't say the same about Trevion Henderson. Has been quite a disappointment for the Dogs. But Amon-Ra, we saw blew up this past week, is our wide receiver too. So did Mark Andrews, although there was missed points on the bench last week. And the Dogs are going with double tight end strategy as of right now because Travis Hunter has somehow become the worst football player we've ever seen. So on Dayton Doodle's side, I mean, Derrick Henry is Derrick Henry. He's been relatively consistent. Omarion Hampton, I still don't think has blown up nearly as much as we've expected him to, but a little bit of a disappointment with Brian Thomas, but George Pickens could fill that space in the wide receiver 1 with without having CD in that lineup. Plugged in Juwan Johnson off the waivers, tight end 4. I think that there's a lot of potential here on the Dayton Doodles side. And so for that, I think that this is a really close one. I think both these guys go for over 100, but I think that the Doodles are going to pull this out by 3, 4, or 5 points somewhere in there. This is going to be a really close matchup, but I'm going to give it to the Doodles.
Yeah, I think not. Well, having Trevion Henderson in the offense for the Chicago Dogs, I think is going to be the limiting factor there. I really like a lot of this team and just really how they've shown up the last few games. Chan is consistent in that terrible Miami team, and Baker is going to continue to be Baker. There's not enough big names. Like you mentioned Travis Hunter falling away. I feel like that was someone the Dogs were expecting to pop off this year. But having Henderson as that RB2, I think at the end of the season, the Chicago Dogs look like a different team because they have some consistency from him. But I just think this early on, he's not as big of a role as Omarion Hampton is looking like he's going to continue to get from the Doodles. My biggest question for the Doodles, you mentioned Brian Thomas Jr. not looking incredible. And then I think that the quarterback position is going to hold the Doodles back from a high ceiling this year. That with Trevor Lawrence, he does not look like the answer. That stack does not look like the answer with Jacksonville at all. Yeah, I do think this is going to be close. I think it's going to look like Chicago's going to pull this off, but Doodle's going to find something. I don't know if there's a Monday matchup, but if there is, I think the Doodles come from behind and pull this one out.
Yeah, I think I'm in agreement with you on this. It comes down to really Baker Mayfield, we just talk about him for a second, how he has really found a home down there in Tampa Bay. And maybe he's not popping off huge points weeks as far as fantasy is concerned, but he is very consistent. Kind of feels a little bit Jared Goff-esque, where he's playing very consistently and can clearly find his way into a starting lineup pretty much anywhere. It does look like we have it's a Sunday night game, so it's not a Monday. It won't be a last-minute thing, but I think that this matchup is also going to be incredibly close. We have two star kickers here. I mean, Jake Elliott's maybe fallen off a little bit, but Brandon Aubrey, didn't he had some crazy long kick this last week, or was that 2 weeks? I might be misremembering. Nonetheless, oh no, that was 2 weeks ago. It was against the Giants. Nonetheless, we have a Sunday night game against Green Bay. So I think going into that game, I think we see a really tight one. I do think that the Doodles pull away, but I don't see this. I think it's going to be a tight game. I don't know how exciting both of these teams are going to be. I agree. I think that Trevor Lawrence as your QB in general is going to, be the Achilles heel of this team. It seems that quarterbacks really do hold more weight in this league than they might in a little bit smaller league or maybe a less competitive league. But a great example of that is the Tarkenton Crawdaddies, who stole Josh Allen from right under Keeks. In fact, no, earned him pretty well. And maybe Josh Allen is the key to getting to having a successful team here in the draft and the DDFFL, because he's 3-0, and this is the strongest start and the best that Tarkenton Crawdaddies have arguably ever looked from my recent memory. And Peyton has to be feeling real comfortable where he's sitting right now with Josh Allen. DeAndre Swift only averaging 9.90 at 10 points a game. But I would also say that I think that the Chicago offense found something last week, and I think that is only going to increase, and you're going to see more utilization from DeAndre Swift. Jordan Mason seeing some higher utilization. Rome Odunze, geez, we knew that there was a threat for him to be number one and have some big points, but it's a very Jamar Chase and Joey Burrow feel there with Caleb Williams and Rome, right? The lots of downfield, big looks, big plays, and up against this Las Vegas team, I just don't see, unfortunately, like I mentioned earlier, Chris's team is probably the biggest fall from greatness. Chris, 2 years in a row is kind of on the struggle bus after having his first 2 years in the Draft Daddy and the DDFFL with, being point leader and just absolutely killing it. He is finding himself on the struggle bus again. And I just don't know who, except for there's maybe one other 3-0 team, but I don't even know if that team could take down the Crawdaddies right now. I think they're hot. And I think those claws stay pinching, boys.
Yeah. I mean, I hate to say it, but looking at Rice Krispies team, right, there's no one shining except for Jahmyr Gibbs right now. You're starting Kenneth Gainwell as your running back too. Jacoby Myers and Chris Olave are your top, and T. Higgins are all your wide receivers, none of which are really even seeming to be their top choice in their offenses as wide receivers. You got Trey Tucker, you've got Rashid Shaheed, and you've got, of course, Jamar Chase. So, relying on those guys, there's not a whole lot of, star power that's, going to potentially blow up for this team. Brock Bowers and Jahmyr Gibbs are really who you got to highlight. And unfortunately, I think you can't say the same about the Crawdaddies, right? He's got Rome and Malik, two top 10 wide receivers right now. Jordan Mason, who's taking over, fully a backfield. He was already kind of dominating. DeAndre Swift, who's not, broken out quite yet. Breece Hall, who's dominating his backfield. And Tucker Kraft, who is showing up to be an even better tight end this year than Brock Bowers has. So in addition to having Josh Allen, right? Josh Allen's already a cheat code. So if he's got Josh Allen and a team around him. So I really love what the Crawdaddies are doing, and I think unfortunately Chris stands no chance.
Yeah, I would have to agree there. I would be curious, just going back to league history. I know that Keegs won twice with Josh Allen. I would imagine Vic had Lamar when he won that year. Blake, I'm not sure who you had as quarterback.
Dak Prescott.
So, I mean, a matchup of champions here, but I mean, like you said, the quarterback position is so valuable in our league for whatever reason. And so Tarkington having him and having that big advantage going into a weaker New Orleans. Actually, New Orleans defense looks decent for as bad of a team they are. But it's just a huge advantage. You know, I would imagine if Chris is betting, he likes to catch lines that put plus money on both sides. And I don't think there's ever going to be a swing in this matchup where his team or you could catch the Crawdaddies at plus money, because I think they're going to start off hot and continue that. You guys said it all. I think the only thing you guys haven't said is on the Crawdaddy side is how is Jackson Dart going to look different with that giant offense for Neighbors? You know, he didn't look great this last game with Russell Wilson, and so you would think that Dart would be an upgrade, but a rookie quarterback coming in, especially with a little bit of a rushing upside, may take away some opportunities from Neighbors there. You just don't know, but I don't think that'll matter too much in this matchup, as you know, the Tarkington Crawdaddies are taking advantage of a Rice Krispie treat that's, you know, stayed outside a little too long, gotten stale, you know, a little bit too mushy. It doesn't have the crispness that you're looking for. No snap, crackle, or pop.
No snap, crackle, or pop. And speaking of stealing away opportunities,
as we look at the Asphyl Amphetamines and Sir Cox-a-Lots, who, you know, while Kirby's team is looking incredible, I do just appreciate, like, I wonder if he were to not be doing as well in the league, if he would be as active as he is in the chat. Because I appreciate his activeness, the willingness to talk crap at all opportunities. And so I think he gets a little bit of prop there. But, you know, if he was 0-3, would he be as active? I'm not sure. So as we look at his team, a lot of players that have popped off. You have Justin Herbert, who looks to have a career resurgence over there. Again, he looks like again, I can't remember what it is. Better than corn. Whatever Jim Harbaugh wants to say out there, better than corn. Jonathan Taylor truly looks like back to form. I mean, back to where he was his first 2 seasons. Clearly like the best running back in the league. And it's wild that CMC again he'll catch probably 20 balls this next game, but it's wild that CMC is projected more than Jonathan Taylor because he just looks like no one can stop him. He looks like prime Derrick Henry, prime CMC. He looks like he hasn't had an injury his entire career. Bucky Irving looks good. He hasn't had the opportunities that you probably wanted to see so far. Debo, same thing in that offense, consistent. Quentin Johnson, Justin Herbert stack will continue to feed families for Kirby all season. You know, Cameron Dicker, he's got a lot of Chargers over here. You got the Chargers defense, kicker, really believing in the Chargers. For the amphetamines, you know, he's loving Caleb Williams. He's loving what that offense looks like with Ben Johnson and CMC healthy, right? Like, you've been looking forward to this. He's really showing what he can do. He's not, you know, maybe running the ball as effectively right now just because of how hurt that San Francisco team is, but to have him healthy, to have him, you know, involved in that pass game has been a wonderful sight to see. And we mentioned earlier on the show, like, is Pacheco the answer at your flex? Who can really step up in that position? And I just think there's not that next answer for you. There's too many holes. And Kirby moves on to a 4-0 start for the second year in a row? Was he 4-0 last year?
Yeah, I mean, Cox has got a scary team with you know, JT, Herbert, Bucky. These are very strong anchor pieces. I will say Debo and QJ are kind of boom or bust right now. Jonnu Smith is kind of a last ditch option on tight ends. So we'll see. Question here for me really is Drake London and Jackson Smith and Jigba. If they can show up, I really think that Ass's team has got a lot of potential here. No Mike Evans to highlight. Likely no Mike Evans. He's doubtful for the Cox this week. So I think QJ is coming into the lineup because of that. But no Mike Evans. I think no win for the Cox this week. Somebody's got to bring him down, and it might as well be the Ass bringing down the Cox.
To be honest, you talk about just to talk about where I believe that the Cox might be a little bit short is and the Mike Evans, even if he is in, and Mbuka is I don't know if he is getting out targeted by Mike Evans, but at least getting the big plays, kind of like Rome Odunze. And how would we expect Jamar? Second time I brought that up today. But Quentin Johnson would be the one where you've seen a little bit less utilization. I think that you're starting to bar down on him defensively, but they've got the Giants this week. So maybe that Herb, would you say better than corn? Which there's nothing better than some corn, man. Come on, let's go. I think that Herbert, I think we see this team stay hot, and that's probably the scariest thing here for me. While I don't love facing off against Jonathan Taylor, I think that CMC, I think we're going to go point for point this week. I'm feeling good about it. They've got San Francisco got Jacksonville and back at home for them. So I think that CMC continues. I mean, they are proving he is really in the workhorse spot and one of the only bright points in their offense right now. And at the same time, I think that is going to continue to benefit. We just need to see a little bit more. We just need the touchdowns because we're getting the utilization. Yeah, but I think it comes down to, I'm going to go with the Mike Evans piece as well. I think that's a really important call out. I'm going with myself here. You're right. I need to fill that hole where Pacheco would be, but Cox is not going to do that this week, or I'm not worried about my hole this week. It's good. It can stay open because we don't need all those points. We're good to go. Ass all the way.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Ass all the way. I mean, that's kind of the mantra I live my life. With that, gentlemen, it is time for our matchup of the week. We got a very important matchup here for two guys, both 2-1. Very strong starts to the year for both of these guys, potentially high-powered offenses, but this can really make or break your season. The difference between being 3-1 and 2-2 is also significant as well. So I think that both of these teams are scary. It's the Muncie Monstars versus Conk Miladi, our commish. Looking at our quarterbacks, we've got Jalen Hurts versus Drake May. We've got, huge rushing upside with the two of them. However, one is showing up with more touchdowns than the other. We've got 4 rushing touchdowns through 3 games for Jalen Hurts and only 1 for Drake May. I think that, of course, you're going to lean in the direction of, having the rushing upside, but Drake May has really proven to be kind of a reliable quarterback and a reliable start, averaging 20 points for New England. But I think that this slight edge, simply because Jalen gets a touchdown every week with the tush push until it's banned, Jalen Hurts is going to be a top option. So Jalen Hurts, and really, again, he excelled last week with his passing as well. So 3 touchdowns in the air. So maybe there's a bit of a resurgence in the air. So I'm going to give the slight edge to the Monstars with Jalen Hurts this week on quarterback. What do you think about running backs there, Seb?
Yeah, running back's a solid matchup. I think if you would have looked at this last week, I think you would easily give it to the Monstars. Bijan has looked like the focal point in that offense, and Kyron has had a good season so far. He's looked solid, but I think the big question is how much will he continue to carry the entire workload every week? Blake Corum has got more and more carries. He found the end zone one of those weeks instead of Kyron getting that push. And how much will the Rams rely on the run as they face Indy, or will they try to go through the air and attack that defense that way? So it could be a little bit interesting. I think there's going to be lots of opportunities. They could have multiple touchdown games. I just don't think they're going to this week. As we favor Saquon and Cam, will Cam Scatterbo continue to get those carries at the goal line, or will they give them the dart? Is the question. Can he continue to have the big week that he had last week with 8 receptions or something? He's not really the receiving back you'd think of, and Saquon didn't have a good week last week, but I think he's due for a bounce back against Tampa Bay. Can he outscore Jalen Hurts? I really think is the question. Will he get some of those carries versus the tush push? It's tough. I think realistically, I'm calling this a wash.
Completely agree. At least Scatterbo is offset your Saquon Barkley lack thereof points last week, but I think that's going to be a key. The QB of Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley are going to be key to watch out for in this matchup.
Yeah.
So Ladd McConkey last week, I mean, he's only averaged 7.98 points for you. You're seeing some of that that the target's going elsewhere, and not sure if is he gonna be able to get it going? That's gonna be, I know Seb's probably questioning that himself right now, but on the same side, you got DK Metcalf, who cannot seem to get a connection with Aaron Rodgers, I guess. Like, not really performing all that well. He's had only had 4 targets last week against New England for 10 points. And that's got to be disappointing there for the Monstars. And I don't know how you can reconcile that. But I guess the flex. But nonetheless, then Michael Pittman Jr., who he's been real high and low, so kind of boom bust boom week, and you got to hope that against these Rams they can have another boom week. Can Daniel Jones continue to find him against Ricky Pearsall? But Ricky Pearsall, who's going up against Jacksonville, who is continued to prove, but very similar situation where he's kind of had a boom bust boom week back and forth. If Ricky Pearsall can put some points up and Ladd McConkey can get you if he can get you to double digits and get you at least 10, then I'm sure you're going to be real happy with it. But right now it does kind of feel like it's a wash, but in a negative way of a wash, because it's not a whole lot going on. I think the focus on these two teams, the Stars, are in the running back position.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that Pearsall's got the volume right now, which, I love volume. Metcalf and Pittman aren't getting the same volume that Pearsall is. And Ladd, despite not getting a whole lot of work, has, the potential with, the quarterback that he's got. So I like.
But is it quality volume?
Yeah.
Is it quality volume?
I like it. So
and DK is facing that Minnesota defense, which looks incredible last week. So I think that's something to point out too.
Okay, good point.
Thinking about tight end and flex, we've got two flex wide receivers that for many teams in this league could be, wide receiver 2s or even wide receiver 1s. We got Ekbuka and Sutton, and Ekbuka's, been phenomenal this year. Very good at finding the end zone, and Sutton had a, really good week this past week and kind of found that Bo Nix connection again. For the tight ends, this is a tale of two tight ends. Kyle Pitts, who has always seemingly been a disappointment, who this year has seen a little bit more work than we kind of expected, although still not finding the end zone. And then Trey McBride, who was a third-round draft pick, who maybe isn't quite performing as a third-round draft pick, but when your tight end is getting you 10 points every week, you're not too upset. So I like Trey McBride over Pitts in this instance, and I like Egbuka over Sutton. So overall, these two positions for me are pretty close to a wash as well.
Wow, it's definitely interesting when you kind of wash most of that position, and it looks like it's coming down to, or most of these teams, and it's kind of coming down to the quarterback's position. You gave that edge to Jalen Hurts. I'll probably give slight edge over here to the Seahawks defense and Jake Bates over Raiders and Chris Boswell when it comes to defense and kickers. Seahawks defense has looked legit, and the Arizona offense is not super scary. I know I have Trey McBride going kind of against each other there. But even if he's not an end zone threat, which, he wasn't all of last year, he's still a top tight end. He can put up yards as the focal point of that offense. And so I think he continues to do that. I think that Kyler Murray probably has a fumble in there, maybe a pick. And the Raiders have the Chicago offense, who has looked really good. And so it'll be interesting to see if they keep him there, if the Monstars look somewhere else for a defense this week, and kind of streaming that. Kickers, honestly, I'm probably going to stream kicker somewhere else too. I'm probably looking to go away from Jake Bates. I just, they go for it on fourth down too much to really have a consistent point value there. But I think I take the slight edge there. So does that even everything out? I mean, obviously, you know where I'm going. I think I take the edge here. Monstars are great, but, they're the villain in the story, and they don't get the win at the end of the day.
Yeah. Curious real quick, Seb, and I agree with your take on Jake Bates. At the same time, not every kicker in the league gets an opportunity to kick a 67-yard field goal. And I'm sure how did that feel watching that go up at the very end of the first half on Monday?
I mean, I had it typed into our group chat, Jake Bates, 67-yard field goal, NFL record. And then, broke my heart a little bit when I had to delete that. But if I would have lost by less than a point, I would have been really disappointed by knowing that his missed field goal would have been the game changer. So, if he would have made it, we would have won, but that's okay.
Yeah. I think I'm also the fact that you're actually starting Courtland Sutton against Cincinnati this week, which of course you're going to do. Like you said, Seattle defense looks pretty strong this year. And when they're going up against Arizona, I think I give you the very slight edge in this one, especially because Drake May is going up against Carolina. Watching Drake May and New England perform last week, I have not really paid much attention to them this year, or really in general since, what was that one guy? Brady, I think was his name. Left. Timothy. Timbo. Yeah, ever since that guy left, Tim Brady kind of took the wind out of the sails in New England. But Drake May, he really does. I mean, he looks good. I would feel good watching him with be the QB of my team. Still kind of shitty with the Monstars. I'm shocked that he's able to keep up with his doctor schedule and being a new husband and also trying to keep up with this beast of a team he has. But Conk Me Laddie going to 3-1, and likely the winner of this matchup likely takes over as first in our division as far as the out of townies goes.
Well, can't be a clean sweep. I think that there's 3 things guaranteed in life. It's death, it's taxes, and it's Jalen Hurts hawking rushing touchdowns from Saquon Barkley. I think we're going to see it at least once this week, and I think we're going to see, whether or not Cam Scatterbo can actually carry this offense. I think in 2 weeks he's showed some promise. He's also scored touchdowns in those 2 weeks. Rookie quarterbacks tend to struggle in their first week they start, and so I'm not expecting that New York Giants offense to do a whole lot, and that's going to drag Cam down. I think, unfortunately, Conk Me Laddie goes the way of Cam Scatterbo this week, and I think that we're going to see the Monstars take a 3-1 start to this season away from the commish. So I am gonna disagree, and I'm gonna go with the Monstars this week.
All right.
So I do think that as you look at your teams, as we look at going into week 4, a lot of this week can really define what the rest of your season looks like. Are you going to be one of those 4-0 teams? Are you going to be 0-4? Or like what side of 500 are you going to be at going into what the next, exiting the first quarter of the season essentially? And what does that put you in playoff position? Do you need to make a big move? Do you need to make a trade? Do you need to trade away your stud to get some pieces? We have bye weeks coming up after this week, and so things are going to start to change. Are you happy with where you're at, or does something need to happen, daddies?
And this would be the point when any professional team would start looking for trades, looking to upgrade, looking to downgrade, I guess, if you're trying to tank your season, which doesn't do anything in fantasy football unless you're trying to eat a bunch of hot dogs, which I'm not convinced Chris isn't trying to do. But I think that we see some trade. I think we see some people get real serious about trades this week. I think everybody has been pretty hesitant to even seriously consider trades at this point, because you need time to let it all sift up to the top and the pour to sift down to the bottom. But I think that we see something come out of this week. I do like how we have a pretty good spread thus far. I'm curious how it's going to go league wide. Yeah, we do have 2 0-3 and 2 3-0 teams, but a lot of talent, a lot of mid-range talent there in both the 2-1 and 1-2 teams.
Yeah, this week 4 will be make or break. Week 5, we'll start to separate the winners from the losers. So it's a big week, daddies. We're excited to see what happens if we didn't pick your team. You've got next week to hopefully prove us wrong. But some folks are looking up. Some folks are looking down. Play the waivers tonight, see what happens, but hit the trade block. And those of you who are sitting at the bottom, like myself and Blake right now, maybe we can make some moves and switch up our luck. So take advantage of some vulnerable daddies willing to trade, and let's get things shaken up here, daddies.
Yeah, to quote our podfather Aaron here, take advantage of some vulnerable daddies.
And with that, we'll see you next week. Sometimes you just need to take a long one.
I love taking a long one. Absolutely. No, nothing more than just, how much I love you, daddies. I'm just so unbelievably in love with you, and I can't wait for some football this week. So we'll send you off with some kisses. Mwah, mwah.
Kisses get me week to week. All right, love you, daddies.